So, literally, moments ago, the reporting restriction on Tommy Robinson has been released because it was challenged by Leeds Live and another journalist. So, now we get the truth of what happened, because here's the thing. It had nothing, absolutely nothing, to do with free speech. So, last week, former EDL frontman Tommy Robinson was arrested outside Leeds Crown Court and subsequently jailed for contempt of court. Robinson, whose real name is Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, was broadcasting on Facebook Live outside the court in Oxford Road when he was stopped by police. He came to Leeds on Friday morning, and it was his Facebook Facebook Live which led to his imprisonment that afternoon. But it was not simply a case about freedom of speech, despite what his supporters have said on social media. His arrest and conviction were to protect our justice system, under legislation that ensures trials don't collapse. The law ensures defendants receive a fair trial, that justice can be done, and try to prevent any witness from giving evidence and being cross-examined in a second trial. So, for example, such as a paedophilia case, might be a bit traumatic for a defendant, for a witness, in this shall we say, to have to give evidence twice. This is why this law is in place. One of the reasons. So Tommy Robinson's supporters have staged protests, started petitions, and cried out that his jailing is an assault on freedom of speech in the UK. Here we explain exactly why the 35-year-old has been locked up and why the media were unable to legally report it until now. So why was Tommy Robinson jailed? So Robinson, or Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, was jailed because he was found in contempt of court. Something, by the way, in which another article in The Independent he has admitted to. An offence he was already serving a suspended sentence for. If you remember, this happened last year. So he knew he would get arrested for this. So if this trial collapses and those guys walk free, then those guys walked free because Tommy Robinson wanted free publicity. So a judge sentenced him to 3 months imprisonment imprisonment suspended for 18 months last May after he was found in contempt of court over a case in Canterbury. He was warned that committing further offences would result in imprisonment, and that is what happened on Friday. Robinson was arrested after filming himself via Facebook Live outside the court. Eventually, the 35-year-old was arrested on suspicion of a breach of peace and was held in court cells before being taken up to the courtroom to face the trial judge. In a rare move, he was arrested, charged and sentenced within 5 hours. The video footage was played to the judge, Geoffrey Marson QC, as Robinson sat in the dock. Contempt of court legislation largely applies to media publications, but as Tommy Robinson was broadcasting live on Facebook to the 778,000 people who like his page and his 848,000 followers, he can be deemed a publisher in his own right. The judge told him, "I respect everyone's right to free speech. That is one of the most important rights we have. Where with those rights come responsibilities, and the responsibility to exercise that freedom of speech within the law. I'm sure you can appreciate the potential consequences of what you have done." So what is contempt of court? Because a lot of people don't actually know, and it's not surprising really. So the Contempt of Court Act of 1981 protects the integrity of court proceedings in the UK and ensures defendants receive a fair trial and makes any actions that could prejudice proceedings. So, for example, publicising something that could influence a jury, an offence which carries a jail sentence of up to 2 years. This act applies to active criminal proceedings. From the point of arrest or the issue of an arrest warrant, a court summons, or an oral charge, whichever happens first. Proceedings are no longer acted upon an acquittal or a sentence or a trial verdict or a charge dismissal. During the active cases, the media cannot punish anything that carries a substantial risk of serious prejudice to the proceedings. This applies to broadcast reports and speeches too. Robinson's broadcast outside of the court found him in contempt of court. Offences like this can cause trials to collapse, and the jury may be deemed unable to deliver a fair verdict at great cost to the court, and therefore the British taxpayer. And that means beginning the process all over again. So now on to the reporting restrictions. Additional reporting restrictions can be applied by judges if they feel publication of certain information carries a risk of serious prejudice. This can, in certain cases, mean reporting anything about an ongoing trial is prohibited until the verdict is reached. This is not a permanent ban, but a ban on publishing permanent ban. This is not a permanent ban on publishing court reports, simply a postponement. So, a reporting restriction was applied to Stephen Yaxley-Lennon's arrest charge and hearing on Friday. Although Leeds Live were aware of the proceedings and our court reporter was present for his sentencing, we did not report the story on Friday. The restrictions didn't mean the case could not be reported at all, just postponed reporting of the proceedings until there was no risk of his case prejudicing another trial. Today, Leeds Live successfully challenged the reporting restrictions, and it was lifted by the judge. Unfortunately, many publications reported the story on Friday in breach of the reporting restrictions, and these publications could potentially be prosecuted and found in contempt of court. So there you go. And he knew he was in contempt of court. He'd already done this last time. In fact, the Independent, the other story that's just gone on this live, has said that he was interviewing defendants going into that court, which again is a big no-no. So he did this purely for publicity, knowing that he would get arrested, and then he could say, oh, it's all about freedom of speech, freedom of speech. It had nothing to do with freedom of speech. It was all about him getting publicity. He has potentially put another trial in jeopardy of falling apart and collapsing, all for publicity. This man is an absolute scumbag. He's there's no other way to describe him. He's an absolute scum of the highest caliber, or shall we say the lowest caliber in this case, because to be honest, I think calling him scum is an insult to scum.